Hi, it's your 5 minute friend Charles GP. We welcome you to the 42nd edition of the program 5 Minute Talk, brought to you by Light to Youth, helping youth in their walk with God. Today we are going to look at teaching ourselves how to live for God. Yes, teaching ourselves how to live for God. There is a war against our souls. But the problem is not that there is a war against our soul. The problem is the strongholds of this war are not outside, but they are within our own lives. If you read the book of James chapter 1 verse 14 to verse 15, it tells us that our desires are the ones that can drag us into sin. In other words, our desires are the bits of sin. That's why 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 11 tells us that we should not follow pleasure, we should not seek pleasure at the expense of our souls. In other words, we should not follow our desire. We should not seek to confirm or satisfy our desires at the expense of our souls. You know, if we go back to the 33rd edition of the program 5 Minute Talk, we see that we talk about there are desires that we can satisfy and there are desires that we ought not to satisfy. And I've been talking about not satisfying desires. If you read the book of 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 22, it tells us that we should not have anything to do with evil desires, but we should have everything to do with godly desires. But how can we do this? Well, we can only do this if we constantly walk with the Spirit, as Galatians chapter 5 verse 16 tells us. So following this commendation from Galatians chapter 5 verse 16, we are to constantly walk with the Spirit. And this will require that we learn to control our bodies in a holy and honorable way, as 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 4 calls us to do. So we have to control our bodies in holy and honorable way. That's what we ought to do, you know. And if we ought to control our bodies in holy and honorable way, that would mean that we should learn first by renewing our mind. That can be found in the book of Romans chapter 12 verse 2. It said we should not be like the people of this world. No, there should be a difference between a believer and an unbeliever, or a Christian and a non-Christian. Yes, there should be a difference. If there is no difference, then the person who is claiming to be the Christian is actually just another non-Christian. That's the truth. So we should start by renewing our minds. So how can we renew our minds? We have to select the things that we see, the things that we hear. We have to know what we're listening to and what we are seeing. And we have to spend time in God's word. We have to read things that will help us to live for God. That's what we ought to do. Yeah? And one thing we should start doing is learning from the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 31. And learning from that book, we will not have our Christian life here and other aspects of our lives there, but instead we will only have our Christian lives. That's the only thing we will have. So anything that we do, we will do it as a Christian. Whether we are at our workplace, at school, or wherever we find ourselves, we will always do what we do as Christians. We will put God at the heart of anything and everything that we do. Thank you very much for being with me on the 42nd edition of the program 5 Minute Talk, brought to you by Light to Youth, helping youth in their walk with God. I have been your 5 minute friend Charles G. Pewy. Remember not to have your Christian life here and other aspects of your life there. Only have your Christian life, and that will begin by renewing your mind, not conforming to the standard of this world. Thank you.